Most people handle disrespect completely wrong. Not a little wrong. Fundamentally, structurally, psychologically wrong. In a way that almost always makes their situation worse while making the person who disrespected them feel more confident about doing it again. You've been there. Someone says something dismissive in front of others. A colleague takes credit for your work without blinking. A person who you've been patient with, generous with, loyal to, suddenly speaks to you like you're beneath them. And in that moment, something ignites. Your face changes. Your chest tightens. And before you've had a second to think, you've either exploded, gone quiet in a way everyone noticed, or said something you had to walk back later. And afterward, somehow, you feel like the situation got worse, not better. Here's the uncomfortable truth: Machiavelli understood that most people never will. Disrespect is rarely just an insult. It is almost always a test, a probe, a social maneuver, sometimes conscious, sometimes instinctive, designed to find out exactly where you stand, how much you can be pushed, and whether the cost of disrespecting you is low enough to do it again. Every time someone disrespects you and you respond in a way that is purely emotional, you answer that test. And the answer you give tells them everything they need to know about how to deal with you in the future. This is not about being cold. It is not about becoming someone who hoards grudges and schemes in silence. What Machiavelli actually understood, and what this video is going to break down completely, is something far more practical and far more powerful than revenge. It is about understanding what disrespect actually is, why it happens, what it reveals, and how strategically intelligent people respond in a way that protects their position, preserves their dignity, and leaves them holding more power than they had before. Before we go further, everything here is about self-protection, awareness, and personal mastery, not about harming or manipulating innocent people. The goal is to help you understand human behavior clearly enough that you stop being a target and start being someone people instinctively think twice about before testing. Let's start at the very beginning. Disrespect does not emerge randomly. It is almost always a product of perception. Specifically, someone's perception that the cost of disrespecting you is acceptable. Think about that for a second. People do not typically walk up to someone they genuinely fear or deeply admire or feel uncertain about and test them. They do it when they feel safe doing it. When they believe, based on everything they've observed about you, that the consequences will be manageable. This means that disrespect, as painful as it is actually information. It tells you something important about how that person has categorized you. And it tells you something even more important about what you might have unknowingly communicated about yourself. Most people miss this completely. They react to the surface insult without ever stopping to read the deeper signal underneath it. Strategic people read both. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of managing how you are perceived, not out of vanity, but because perception is the foundation that social power is built on. If people around you have arrived at an incorrect and unfavorable perception of who you are, your job is not to complain about it. Your job is to correct it, calmly, deliberately, over time. But here's where it gets complicated. How you respond to disrespect in the moment is the single most powerful perception-setting tool available to you. It will communicate, louder than anything you could say, exactly who you are. This is why the emotional reaction, the explosion, the public confrontation, the lengthy defense of yourself, almost always backfires. Not because composure is some abstract virtue, but because emotionally reactive people hand their power to whoever triggered them. The moment you lose your calm, the moment you raise your voice or visibly crumble, you have communicated that this person has the ability to move you, to destabilize you. And a person who can be destabilized can be controlled. Socially intelligent people understand this without ever being taught it explicitly. Their composure in moments of provocation isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about understanding that their response is the message, and that message needs to be chosen deliberately. The first principle is this: never react, respond. There is a difference that most people have never actually thought about. A reaction is automatic. It is emotion converted directly into behavior, with almost no gap between the stimulus and the output. Someone says something dismissive, and the response is immediate. Anger, withdrawal, defensiveness. The emotion drives the bus. A response is chosen. It happens after a pause, even a very small one, in which you have observed what just happened, considered what outcome you actually want, and selected a behavior that moves you toward that outcome. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this gap constantly in his private journals. He called it the space between stimulus and response. And he understood that everything depends on what you do inside that space. Average people have no gap. Their emotions close it immediately. Strategically intelligent people learn to expand it. And inside that gap is where your actual power lives. Here's what this looks like in practice. Someone says something to you that is dismissive, condescending, or openly disrespectful. Instead of responding immediately, you simply look at them, not with anger, not with hurt, with a calm, measured attention that says, without a single word, that you have registered exactly what just happened, and you are in no hurry. That pause, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, communicates more than most people manage to communicate in an entire conversation. It signals composure. It signals awareness. And it often signals, subtly but unmistakably, that this person has misjudged who they are dealing with. Most people who disrespect others are counting on one of two reactions. Either you crumble, which confirms you are safe to continue testing, or you explode, which gives them a story to tell and positions you as the unstable one. Your composure denies them both outcomes. But here's where it gets more interesting. There is a layer beneath the initial response that most people never get to, and it is where the real social intelligence lives. Disrespect happens on a spectrum. Not every slight carries the same weight. Not every insult deserves the same energy. Someone who cuts you off in a meeting has different motivations than a person who publicly undermines you in front of your colleagues. A stranger who says something rude in passing is operating in an entirely different social context than someone inside your trusted circle who has started speaking to you differently. Emotionally reactive people treat all of it the same way. They respond to small provocations with the same energy they bring to major ones, which means they're constantly burning energy, constantly looking unstable, and constantly giving their reactions away cheaply. Psychologically intelligent people make distinctions. They ask, before responding to anything, what is actually happening here? What does this person want from this exchange? What does my response cost me? And what does it communicate? This is the second principle. Calibrate your response to the actual threat, not to your emotional state. Robert Greene wrote about the danger of what he called the emotional sink, the trap of letting other people pull you down to a level of reaction where you lose all strategic advantage. Petty people draw you into petty conflicts. Reactive people make you reactive. Anxious people transfer their anxiety. The moment you start calibrating your responses based on your feelings rather than on the actual strategic reality of the situation, you've already lost something important. Small disrespects, things that are low-level, likely careless, possibly unintentional, often require nothing more than a brief, calm signal that you noticed and moving on without drama. Your silence, your unchanged posture, your refusal to escalate communicates something powerful all by itself. Larger disrespects, things done publicly, deliberately, or repeatedly, require a different kind of response. Not an explosion, not a breakdown. A calm, direct, unmistakable signal that this will not continue. Here's what that looks like. You are in a meeting. A colleague interrupts you, talks over your idea as if you hadn't spoken, and then presents something almost identical to what you just said as if it were their own contribution. The room doesn't notice or pretends not to. The emotional response is to either say nothing and feel humiliated, or to call it out immediately in a way that sounds defensive and petty because it happens in a moment of emotional heat. The strategic response is different. You stay calm. You continue the meeting normally. But afterward, in a quieter setting, you create a conversation with the relevant person or relevant people that reestablishes your position on that idea, your ownership of it, and your awareness that it was misrepresented. You do this without anger, without accusation, with the kind of calm clarity that communicates, "I see exactly what happened, and I'm choosing how to address it on my own terms, not yours." That is a fundamentally different kind of power than exploding in a meeting. And it is far more effective. Which brings us to the third principle, and the one that surprises people the most. In many situations, the most powerful response to disrespect is not a confrontation. It is elevation. Here's what I mean. The person who disrespects you is often expecting a specific kind of response. They've predicted how you'll react, because most people are predictable. They've accounted for your emotional state, your typical behavior, the social role they've assigned you in their mental model. What they haven't accounted for is you doing something entirely different, continuing to pursue your goals, improving your position, demonstrating your value through results rather than through arguments, moving with a kind of quiet confidence that makes it increasingly difficult for the narrative they've assigned to you to stick. Sun Tzu wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue your enemy without fighting. There is a version of this principle that applies to social dynamics with remarkable precision. When you respond to disrespect by visibly elevating, by becoming better, more composed, more effective, more valuable, you create a situation where the disrespect itself starts to look small, misplaced, even embarrassing, in hindsight, for the person who offered it. This takes longer than an argument. It requires patience that most people do not have. But the results it produces are far more durable and far more satisfying than anything a 5-minute confrontation can achieve. Most people want to win the argument. Strategic people want to win the longer game. Now, which of these principles have you experienced? Have you ever held your composure in a situation where you were clearly being tested and watched the dynamic shift in your favor afterward? Or is there a moment where you wish you'd responded differently? Comment below. I want to know what you've actually lived through, because this isn't just theory. This is the daily reality that most people are navigating without a map. Let's talk about reputation, because Machiavelli spent a significant portion of his writing on this. And it connects directly to how disrespect works and why it keeps happening to some people while barely touching others. Reputation is not just vanity. It is infrastructure. A well-established reputation operates like a protective layer around you in social environments. When people know, through observation, through experience, through what they've heard from others, that you are not someone who accepts poor treatment quietly, that you are someone who notices, who remembers, and who responds with precision, they calibrate their behavior around you accordingly. This is the fourth principle. Your reputation is your first line of defense. Build it before you need it. Most people build their reputation accidentally, as a byproduct of their emotional patterns and habitual behaviors. Whatever they happen to do consistently becomes what people expect from them. Strategically aware people build their reputation deliberately. They understand that every interaction is a data point in someone's mental model of them. Every time you hold your composure under pressure, every time you respond to provocation with calm clarity, every time you follow through on what you've said and hold your boundaries without drama, you are adding to a picture that people carry of you, even when you're not in the room. And that picture, over time, creates a kind of social gravity. It pulls certain kinds of treatment toward you, and it pushes certain kinds of behavior away. People who test others look for soft targets. They look for people whose boundaries feel negotiable, whose reactions feel manageable, whose position feels easy to chip away at. A strong, consistent reputation changes that calculus. It is not a guarantee. Nothing in human dynamics is. But it changes the math. Here's something that people almost never talk about, but which Machiavelli understood clearly. Disrespect within your close circle, from friends, family, colleagues you've trusted, is categorically different from disrespect from strangers or rivals. And it requires a categorically different kind of response. When someone outside your inner circle disrespects you, the strategic response is usually about perception management and composure. When someone inside your trusted circle does it, the question becomes much more important and much more personal. Because here is the uncomfortable reality. The people who are closest to you have the most information about your vulnerabilities. They have watched you for long enough to know how to push you, how to minimize you, how to test your limits. When one of those people begins disrespecting you, even subtly, even in ways that feel like jokes or small moments, what is actually happening is a shift in how they see the balance of power between you. Something has changed, either in how you've been showing up, or in how they're beginning to see themselves in relation to you, or in some third factor that the disrespect is a symptom of. This is the fifth principle. When someone close to you begins to disrespect you, address the shift, not just the surface behavior, because confronting the specific insult in isolation misses the actual issue. The insult is a signal, and signals point to things that are happening beneath the surface. The strategically intelligent person notices the pattern before it becomes entrenched. They create a direct, private, calm conversation, not in the heat of a moment, but deliberately. Not to accuse, but to make something clear. Something like this: I've noticed a shift in how we've been communicating lately. I want to address it directly because I value this relationship, but I also need to be honest that this isn't something I'm willing to let continue. That sentence, said calmly and clearly, does several things simultaneously. It demonstrates self-awareness. It demonstrates composure. It demonstrates that you are not operating out of wounded pride, but out of a clear sense of what you will and won't accept. And it creates an opening for the other person to either correct the behavior or reveal that they never actually valued the relationship the way you thought they did. Either outcome is better than silence. Silence, in this context, is not the same as composure. Silence that comes from not knowing how to address something, or from hoping it resolves itself, or from fear of conflict, that silence is not strategic. That is avoidance. And avoidance is what allows small disrespects to accumulate until they've permanently altered the power dynamic between you and someone you should have addressed months earlier. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't acknowledge, the reactions we suppress rather than process. One of the deepest things this connects to is how people handle disrespect. The unexpressed response, the swallowed reaction, the disrespect you pretended not to notice and told yourself you were above. These things don't disappear. They accumulate. They change you from the inside. They make you more reactive in other contexts, more withdrawn in others, and more resentful underneath a surface of calm that is really just suppression wearing the mask of composure. Real composure is not suppression. Real composure is the ability to feel the full weight of what just happened and still choose your response deliberately. That difference matters, because people can feel the difference, even if they can't name it. There is a quality to authentic composure that is entirely different from someone who is quietly seething while pretending to be fine. One communicates strength. The other communicates a kind of pressure building behind a wall that everyone is waiting to see crack. This brings us to the sixth principle, and it is perhaps the most important one in the entire video. Know precisely what you will and will not accept, and communicate that through consistent behavior, not through angry declarations. This is something most people get exactly backwards. They say nothing for a long time, accepting behavior they should have addressed early. Then, when they've reached their limit, they make a declaration, often emotional, often dramatic, often in front of people, about what they will not tolerate. And because the declaration comes in an emotional state, and because it comes after a long silence that tells people this boundary was actually quite negotiable, it doesn't carry the weight they expect it to carry. Strategic people do the opposite. They set the tone early. They address things calmly at the beginning, before a pattern has a chance to form. They make it clear, through quiet and consistent behavior, what kind of treatment they expect and what kind they will not accept, long before they've reached a point of frustration. And they never make declarations they aren't fully prepared to follow through on. Because here is the final Machiavellian truth about disrespect. Words are cheap. Behavior is currency. You can tell someone you will not be treated poorly. You can explain your boundaries in perfect, eloquent language. You can have the most reasonable, mature conversation about respect that anyone has ever had. And none of it means anything if your subsequent behavior tells a different story. People believe what they see far more than what they hear. So when you say you won't accept something, and then you accept it, they have learned quietly and clearly that your words don't actually determine your limits. Your emotional threshold does. And emotional thresholds can be managed. This is the core vulnerability that the most strategically sophisticated people in your life, and sometimes the most dangerous, are watching for. But now, having gone through all of this, let's talk about what's on the other side of it. Because there is something freeing about truly understanding what disrespect is. Once you see it as information rather than injury, something changes. It stops having the same power over you that it used to have. Not because you care less, but because you understand more. You understand that most disrespect is not really about you. It's about the person delivering it, about their insecurities, their power games, their misreading of the situation, their need to establish position. When someone tests you, they are revealing their own psychology far more than they are revealing yours. And once you can see that clearly, staying calm is not even particularly difficult anymore. Because you're no longer inside the emotional experience of being personally wounded. You're watching a human behavior pattern unfold in front of you. One you recognize, one you've studied, one you know exactly how to navigate. That is not coldness. That is clarity. Strategic people, high-value thinkers, self-mastered individuals. They don't respond to disrespect with rage or with silent suffering. They respond with a calm that is grounded in genuine understanding. Understanding of human nature. Understanding of social dynamics. Understanding of themselves. And that kind of calm is one of the most powerful signals any person can send. So here's what you take away from everything we've covered. Disrespect is a test, not just an insult. And your response is the answer that determines what comes next. Reacting from emotion hands your power away. Responding from composure keeps it. Calibrate your response to the actual situation, not to how you feel in the moment. Elevation is often more powerful than confrontation. Your reputation is your first line of defense. Build it before you need it. Address shifts in close relationships directly and calmly, before they become patterns. And above all, let your consistent behavior do the communicating. Because behavior is the only language that people in this world really believe. Machiavelli's deepest lesson was not that the world is cruel. It is that the world is predictable. If you understand human nature honestly, without illusion. And when you understand it, you stop being surprised by it, stop being wounded by it in ways you can't recover from, and start moving through it with a clarity and composure that most people will never quite be able to explain. They'll just feel it when they're around you, and they'll think twice. If you've made it this far, think about this. Which of these principles hit you hardest? Was there a situation in your own life where you wish you'd had this understanding earlier? Leave it in the comments, genuinely. Because the most interesting conversations about human behavior don't happen in books. They happen between real people who've lived it. If this video expanded how you see people and how you carry yourself, like it. Subscribe to Mind Dominion and turn on notifications, because what's coming next goes even deeper into the psychology of power, influence, and what it actually means to be someone that the world cannot easily move. The world hasn't changed. It has always been this way. The only thing that changes is whether you see it clearly. Now you do.